Muted.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to EPM Partners webinar, the final one of the year. And today's subject line is Project Online versus Project Server and Reporting. And we have Laith with us today to talk us through this subject. Thanks, Laith, for joining us today.
Thanks, Chantel. All right, well, I guess I'm going to get right into it, but I guess just a bit of an intro to today's webinar. Today's webinar is fairly technical for, I guess, people or audience who are interested in the differences between the reporting or the way you report from Project Server, Microsoft Project Server versus Project Online. We're going to talk about the fundamental differences between the two and some kind of, if you like, recommended solutions and how you put reporting or you get your reports out of Project Online. So yeah, just wanted to say that it's a fairly technical webinar today. It's not going to go through like all the deep level detail of the technical solution, but it's fairly technical. I guess the first thing that I wanted to do really is to understand the difference between the Project Server and Project Online as a solution. I guess the bottom line is they're both Microsoft. Sorry for the typo there. That's Microsoft. They are basically the same thing. Project Server or Project Online, they are exactly the same thing from the functionality perspective. From the business perspective, it is basically the same solution. Microsoft called this solution the Project Portfolio Management Tool, the Microsoft PPM tool, if you'd like. But if you look at the kind of the details of this solution, the Microsoft PPM solution, it's really made of the following. You have to have some kind of a physical infrastructure somewhere, which is basically servers, boxes, RAM and storage and so on. Then you put your operating system on top of it, and that's basically Windows Server. So you install Windows Server, whatever version. And then you put the kind of the database T, and that's in this case a SQL. After you've done your database, you put a SharePoint farm, a Microsoft SharePoint farm. So that's a requirement, not an option, obviously. And then at the end, you install Project Server. And this infrastructure, or these requirements, putting them all together, will give you at the end, so all this kind of complex architecture and hardware and software installation and farm. At the end, the way the solution presents itself to the users through a single site. That site is usually referred to as the Project Web Access, or PWA. So it's a site that users will have access to and interact with the solution, or the interface for the Microsoft Project Portfolio Management Tool is that single site called the Project Web Access. Users can elect to use a browser. Well, to access the site, obviously you need a browser, but you can elect to use any of the major browsers. But also users can use the Microsoft Project Professional desktop application, if you'd like. Now, this is accessing only a single component of the Microsoft Project Portfolio Management solution, and that is the schedule of a project, a particular project, or even a combination of projects. But it is just one component of the schedule. A single user who elected to use the Project Professional desktop application to access the schedule will still need a browser to access the other areas of the PPM tool. Again, this is not a kind of a business webinar, so I'm not going to talk about the different functional areas of the tool, but just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to our understanding of the different ways of accessing the Microsoft PPM tool. Now, the reporting, which is kind of the main topic of today's webinar, is what kind of reporting we get outside the tool. So the reporting is actually driven from the SQL T, and the one that is kind of colored in gray here. And it's really everything you want to report, any kind of report you want to generate off the PPM solution, it will be coming from that SQL T, from that database or databases. It depends on your version, implementation, and so on. Now, the report itself can present itself using, starting from a simple Excel to a more kind of a informational reporting using SQL reporting services. The second box, or to the more advanced and new kind of a dashboarding technology that Microsoft has introduced a couple of months ago called Power BI, which I'm going to touch on later today on the webinar. So this is really what reporting is when it comes to the Microsoft PPM solution. Now, the reporting technologies that I referred to here is only just an example of what you can use in terms of reporting. So Excel, SSRS, and Power BI are just the most common ones, if you'd like, that we use when it comes to reporting from the PPM tool. But any reporting technology, whether it's Microsoft or not, can be used to report against the data stored in your databases. Now, those reports can be exposed again through the same site, through the same Project Web Access site, back to your users, or otherwise. So it can be done through other interfaces, whether they are web-based or browser-based or not. It doesn't matter really, but you can expose them through a site, an application, however you want to present them. Is really not relevant to the tool of choice or the data source. So as I said, the entire thing here makes up the Microsoft PPM as a solution. Now, emphasis on that red kind of arrow here, because most of the talk that we're going to do today is around it. So this is how you get the data from your SQL layer of the Microsoft PPM solution. So this is really the big topic today. How do we actually go and access the information required, stored as data in our SQL layer? Now, the PPM, and again, this is just to make sure that we understand the difference between Project Online and Project Server. Project Server as an application of the Microsoft PPM solution can be either installed on premises, and that's basically going to be Project Server installed on your own infrastructure, or it can be in the cloud. And in the cloud, mainly we're talking about Microsoft Project Online, and that's Microsoft's hosting Project Server for you in their Office 365 farm. It's a global farm of millions of servers around the world. It's obviously one of the biggest farms actually in the globe, well, in the world, and it's obviously very strong, and it's fast and reliable and all the rest. So you can have it hosted for you by Microsoft on their O365 infrastructure, and it is here in Australia, so the data centers actually are in Sydney and Melbourne, and that's the Project Server hosted by Microsoft for you. Now, one of the things I want to say about the Project Online hosted, which is Project Server hosted by Microsoft, is that it will always have the latest and greatest. So it will always be patched. It will always have the new features. You don't have to worry about upgrading and so on. So unless there's a strong reason for not to go with Project Online, be it you already invested in infrastructure and you have Project Server in house, or it's too hard to move to the cloud, or your company policy is against moving to the cloud, or whatever reason, I would consider Project Online to be the first option today. And the other one is our own EPM partners, EPM On Demand, and this is us hosting Project Server for you on Azure, which happens to be the same data center where Project Online is hosted here in Australia, so Sydney and Melbourne. But basically, this is us hosting Project Server for you on your behalf, taking care of the infrastructure behind it and maintaining and supporting it. Now, for each option, there's the pros and cons. I might actually go to the, before we go to the second slide, which shows you the differences, I might just ask and see how many of you have Project Server on-prem, how many of you are on on-demand service, and how many of you are on Project Online. So I'll give you a minute to answer.
Just thought I'd also thank everyone for joining us today, and feel free throughout the webinar to post any questions to Laith. We'll endeavour to answer them either during the webinar or at the end, so feel free to let us know your questions. Okay, we'll just wait a few more minutes for a few more people. Okay. And here are our results.
Sorry.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. Okay. All right, so the result actually is quite, all right, that's a bit interesting. No one actually here is on Project Online. Maybe that's really the incentive or the reason why you joined this webinar to understand more about Project Online. So mostly you have Project Server installed on-prem. Some of you have nothing, so not Project Server, or you've been Project Online, and I guess a few of you are on the EPM On Demand or service. That's good to know. All right, so moving on, I guess to go through these three options and understand really the differences between them, it's really, well, when it comes to reporting, by the way, there are many things about these three options. There's pros and cons for each one of those. But as I said, Project Online would be my first option if I were looking at these, unless you have other reasons to consider the other two options. But from the left here, the Project Online, which is a true software as a service situation here. The green, I guess, boxes in a Project Online implementation or situation of the Microsoft PPM means that all the layers of your PPM solution are shared with other clients and tenants, if you'd like. So apart from the Project Web Access site that you have dedicated for you, but the back end, the infrastructure, the services, including the SQL Server itself and the SQL backend, is obviously shared amongst all the tenants that are on Project Online, or in fact Office 365. Well, if you go one step and use the EPM On Demand service, it's kind of partially hosted, where the infrastructure, and this is an infrastructure as a service, the physical infrastructure and the Windows servers are basically hosted by Microsoft. The SQL, SharePoint, and Project Server are dedicated to you, hosted by our CPM partners. So it's managed and maintained by us on your behalf, but it's dedicated for you as a client. And that means that the SQL TE is dedicated for you. The SQL instance, if I want to be more accurate, is dedicated for the client, and that's quite important, as we're going to see later on, and why it is important when it comes to reporting again. While on-prem, obviously, you own everything. It's yours, it's installed and looked after by your staff and so on. So this is really important to understand. And as I said, emphasis on the SQL or database TE, because we're going to talk about it a lot when we compare or we understand the difference in terms of reporting. Right, so reporting. So when you look at reporting, I guess it's a concept, not even just specific to the Microsoft PPM solution, but obviously it is relevant when we talk about Microsoft PPM. But when you're talking to reporting in general, I guess there are three main points that needs to be considered or thought of, or if you'd like, planned before you decide on the direction or roadmap for your reporting solution. First of all, how do I access the data? So the data, in our case, the Microsoft PPM solution, is sitting on a SQL server somewhere. Again, on-prem with you, on demand with us, managed on your behalf, Microsoft with Microsoft shared. So first of all, how do I access those different locations? What's the best way to accessing it as a user, as a consumer of the tool, if you like? And then the tool of choice to build the report. Am I going to use Excel? Am I going to use Power BI? Am I going to use reporting services and any other Crystal reports? If anyone has been exposed to Crystal reports or any other reporting technology that you might be familiar with, can be used as long as you have access to the data. And then the last question, I guess, is how do I expose them to the user, expose those reports to the users or to the people who would like to read and benefit from those reports. I can either expose it to them through the same site, the Project Web Access site, if it's applicable or feasible. I can elect to have it hosted by a different web page and direct my users to those web pages, or I can get it exposed through Excel or whatever format, basically. But these are the three key points that we consider when we're talking about a reporting solution for any enterprise type solutions. Now, the key difference between Project Online and Project Server is not how you build the report, is not how you expose it to the user. They're going to be consistent across the two. It is really how to access the data between the three. This is really the key difference between Project Online and a Project Server installation to give you the Microsoft PPM solution. If you, I guess, understand, or if we go around this point on how to access the data and we understand the difference between the two, then from there on, it is exactly the same. You can use the same tool to build the reports and the dashboards. You can expose them exactly the same way. From there on, they are basically exactly the same. There are no differences between the two, to a certain extent, obviously. Now, so how do we then access the data on our SQL T? Basically, if you would like, again, relevant to our Microsoft PPM solution, there are two types of access method, if you'd like, or access type. Effectively, they are APIs, but I'm not going to go to the technical details of the differences between the two, but let's call them access types. So you can access the database or data of your Microsoft PPM solution through what we call the OLEDB, or the kind of a open database connection. So the first type is really directly querying the database that holds the information, the data of your Microsoft PPM solution. You go to the database, you query the data, you present it to a report. That's the first way you can do it. And for that, you can use SQL reporting services, Excel services, Power BI, any kind of type of reporting tool. The other way is it's a web-based. You don't go to the database directly and touch it and query the data from it. You go through a web tunnel, if you'd like, through a standard HTTP or HTTPS protocol. So as if you're browsing the site, you're browsing the data, if that makes sense. So you don't go to the SQL itself, you don't see the table, you don't see the view, you don't query the tables and the view, you browse the data, if that makes sense. And that's called the OData. It's an open source protocol that Microsoft adopted to its technologies, and it's quite popular these days with many online services, be it a Protocol Online or other Microsoft or non-Microsoft vendors or providers who have web services on the internet. Even banks, for that matter, would use OData to a certain extent. But it is a way to browse the data through a web interface, not to access the database directly and query the tables and the views. Now, Project Online will only give you one type of SQL data access, which is the OData, the browsing of the data. Well, Project Server, I'm talking about 2013 in this case, while 2016 is around the corner, should be announced hopefully soon, but 2013 will support both ways. You can go to SQL and touch the database and query the database directly and query the tables and the views, or you can go through the same way that you go to Project Online and you browse the data and then generate your reports. So that's the main and the key difference. So this slide here is really the kind of the summary of all, what are the differences between Project Online and Project Server reporting. This one point is the singular most important main point that we have in terms of differences. You cannot have an OLEDB queries to the Project Online database at the back end, because you simply don't see the database, you don't touch it, you don't view it. It is basically through it's OData, which is browsing the data through web service through the application. Now, okay, so let's talk about this OData thing that seems to be the way to go with Project Online. Now, there are types of OData. There's one called the CSOM and one called, it's the OData. It's two different APIs. And now we're talking now specific to the Microsoft PPM solution. The CSOM type of OData, if you'd like, feed or browsing, is a bit harder to work with, and I'll show. I will show you a single one of those, but I'll show you what we mean by browsing the data. But CSOM is in terms of structure on how the data can be browsed, is a bit harder than the second one, which is the OData. But it gives you the ability to read and write data. So you can read data from your Project Online. So, for example, give me a list of projects and their start and finish dates. A very simple query. You can go through CSOM and get the output, which is read in this case. You can create a table in Excel, in SSRS, or in Power BI if you want to, or whatever the reporting tool of your choice. But we'll get to that in a minute on how you actually then consume the data after you browse to it and on those technologies. But you basically just display those data. That's the output. It's just a report. Or you can write back to Project Online. So you can use CSOM to write back. So for example, the same list that we talked about, projects and their start and finish dates, and you want to modify those start dates if you'd like for those projects. You can modify them in a certain interface. I'm going to use Excel here as an example. And then you can send it back to Project Online through CSOM to write back to the Project Online, if you'd like, database at the back end. Now the other one is OData. It's easier to deal with. It's easier to read and query, but it is only for reading. So you cannot write back to Project Online database. You can only read data. So the same example that we have, a list of projects, start and finish dates for the projects. You can get that through the OData, but you cannot write back to Project Online using the OData standard API. If you want to write back, you use CSOM. Now, reading data through the PSI, which is Project Server API or Project Online API, is not supported anymore. It's been a couple of months ago or a month ago, has been discontinued as a reading method for data through the PSI. My understanding, that's for it's not used anymore. Now, when you use those OData methods, if you'd like, or points, the first output of the data is going to be dumped into either a JSON or an XML format. By default, it's XML. I don't know how familiar you are with JSON, but it's another format basically. It's a bit easier to read the JSON format than XML. But basically, JSON is an output of a OData query, but the same OData query can give you XML. I'm going to actually just go to the next slide and just put that in a graph and then go back to the previous one. So the idea here is that you have Project Online, your Project Web Access basically site on Project Online. You use OData, whether it is CSOM or OData. What you get is you get a file. This file or this representation of the data will be either on a JSON or an XML file. Let me actually show you that. So I'm going to actually go. So this is a Project Online site. It's used for demonstration. I've opened through a browser. These are a list of projects. And say that I want to query. I want to browse the data. I don't want just to see it via this interface. I want to browse the data that I can then use to report on. Right. So I'm just going to show you that I have a set of projects. Just check the projects here. And so list of projects, as you can see, if you're familiar with Project Center, this is Project Center, but lots of projects. Okay. So how do I go and then using the same browser? Again, it's browsing. So using this protocol, the HTTPS, how do I browse to the data, not to the website itself? So basically, there are two extensions. I've actually made them ready here. This one here will query as well. There are two extensions based on the two different formats for each type of entity. Let me repeat that. So you know how we said when you go and query the data through OData path, you can either dump it into a format called JSON or XML. If it's JSON, it's a different URL or address to get the data. If it's XML, it's a different URL to get the data. However, it's not a single URL to get all the data of Project Online. It's an entity base. So if you want project-related information, it will be different than resource-related information or task-related information. So the URL will differ based on the format of the output and the entity or entities you are wanting the data for. Let me repeat that. It depends on the output of the format of the output of the data browsing and the entity you are querying. The URL will be different. So what I have here is the XML format for the projects-related data for Project Online. So if I just copy that URL and stick it at the end of the of the URL. So you know how I have PWA? At the end of PWA, I'll just paste that one there. Oops, I have two slash. And if I enter that, that should give me the XML format of the project's data or project online. So press enter. There we go. Obviously, it's not readable. It's really hard to read. But this is actually the data that we have, the project-related data that we have in this specific PWA instance, which is a project online one. Now, if you want to kind of make it more readable.
Laith, I'll just get you to hold there for a moment. I don't think that's refreshed through to the actual, oh, there we go. That's what Laith's talking about.
Sorry, okay. So yeah, we were talking about addresses here. So I put in an address here against the URL, and this is the XML format of data. Again, it's not very friendly when you want to read it, but this is the output through this address that I put in here. So that basically gives you the raw data, browsing of it. You can take this then and give it to a certain reporting tool to generate reports. But before I do that, I'm probably just going to read it in a more kind of a nicer way. So I'm going to just go to one of those XML kind of views. So just convert the XML to kind of what they call a tree view. So pasted the text on the left-hand side here. And that basically goes and say, okay, well, the data that you have here from the feed, the ID of the site, the title of the feed, and then if we go and browse, scroll down, you'll see that we'll see each project, the project name, project ID, the date, and so on for each entity. Again, it's not very, it's not very nice output, but it's at least more readable than the one that was on the page itself. Now that's the XML format. Okay, what about the JSON format? So again, it's a different URL. I'm going to copy that. I think I need /_ and I'm going to copy that, paste it on this against the same PWA site, and I should see the JSON format for it. Now, as you can see, it's not that much better. Still not that better, but it's actually a different format. Again, I can put it in one of those, I guess, converters online, and I can click on the viewer. It seems that there's a lag between my screen and what's showing on the webinar. So I'll give it a minute. This is what you're looking at now, is the JSON format through the page. And I've took it to the kind of a conversion, and then there you go. So I can see now I have 37 projects. If I open a certain project, let's open project number 22, I can see the values against the fields of that project. For example, the project calendar duration is 65. The project finish date is the whatever, that date there, and so on. The project name is remote desktop deployment, and this is now information, data that I have basically available for me to browse through a URL that I put against my PWA instance. It's right here. But by itself, it is not a report, so I can't really, show that as a report or use that as a report. So, but we know now that through the URL, if I just, put a URL against my project online, or project server, for that matter, by the way. You can do it for project server as well. I'll get the raw either JSON or XML output of my data, projects, tasks, resources, and then from there on, we go back to my deck. So from there on, so we got those two kind of, well, either or. You don't need them both if you're querying the same type of entity, projects in my case. From there on, the best way to expose it to your reporting tool of choice is that then you convert them into an actual tables in a SQL database. And to do that, you can use things like SQL Server integration services. It can be done programmatically, as in you write a code to convert a JSON or an XML to SQL database, or you use SQL Server integration services. So SQL Server integration services, you write a package, and we'll talk about real-time versus scheduled in a minute, but you schedule a task and you go, all right, query that URL / projects, convert get me the JSON, convert the JSON into SQL, and now it's sitting in SQL database. Now, once it's sitting in SQL database, a SQL database, so that is outside Project Online. It could be on-premise, it could be hosted on Azure, but it is your SQL database, or hosted to you by a partner, doesn't matter. But it will be sitting on a SQL database that you can touch, that you can access, that you can play with, and so on. However, it is not going to be, obviously, your Project Online data. It will be a copy of it. So you browsed through the OData, you took a copy, you put it on JSON or an XML format, you then put those data in the SQL database here that is now basically a replica of the data that you had in Project Online. So as you see, the green component here is just a copy, a replica of the data that you had in Project Online. Now from there on, it's a SQL database. You can use an OLEDB connection. You can go connect to Excel, SQL reporting services, Power BI, whatever is the tool of choice to produce the report, and start your reporting and do the reporting you want, and so on and so forth, because now it's a SQL database. So this is the way around, or this is the way that Project Online would basically expose its data to the reporting solution of our choice. It's through an OData feed, and then a way to convert it, and so on. I'm going to go back to this slide here. These are the two addresses that we talked about, and these are just examples for projects related data, not resources, for example, or tasks. By the way, it's heavily documented on the net. So if you just search for it, Google Project Online or data, and it will give you all the URLs that are required for you to see. And Project Server, by the way. So when I say all data, as I said, it's supported for both Project Server and Project Online. So the same concept that we had there is applied to Project Server, and it's heavily documented, as I said, on the net. Now, because it's HTTP, because it's browsing, and because it is a copy of the data, not a direct access to it, this feed here, it's called the OData feed here, can either be scheduled to happen in every hour, every 2 hours, or every night. So you schedule through the SSIS or other technologies to say, well, look, browse to the JSON or the XML page of Project Online for projects, convert it to data in my SQL database every hour, and that will happen every hour. Or what you can do is you can write a custom code, if you'd like, listen to any changes in Project Online through something called Event Handler. So if there is any changes in the Project Online, go and just query that change and bring it to my SQL database. So it's almost real time. So a user comes in and creates a new project. Your custom code will listen to that event. Will say, okay, there's an event. I need to make sure to know what that event has done in terms of the data. Bring the data, copy it across, put it in SQL, and that becomes available for you to report from. So instead of waiting to query all the changes every hour, 2 hours, query the changes, copy them as they happen in real time. And that will make it a kind of closer to a real-time solution than a scheduled copy every hour or two. Now, things to note about the OData limitation when it comes to the OData, not the CSOM type of it. So I'm going to talk about the OData type queries, not the CSOM type of query. It is limited when it comes to what kind of fields you would, or the number of fields or metadata, if you'd like, that are going to query from Project Online. For example, it won't give you, because this is actually a service that Microsoft has built to expose the data for you. So the OData, not CSOM, will, for example, will only give you, when you put in that URL that we talked about, will give you only a subset of the out-of-the-box fields. So if you look at that, so if I go back to my for example, that JSON output of my 37 projects and open that project number 22, the list of the fields, as you see here, the list of the fields I have here I can't control. I can't say, well, okay, you know how you show me baseline something? Baseline is a good one because it only sends you a subset of the baseline data. Okay, maybe this one is not baseline or whatever. I don't know. So basically, it is something that Microsoft has predefined in terms of what out-of-the-box fields you get when you browse to this URL through the OData Feed. And even more, when it comes to custom fields, it is limited to 45 text custom fields. So if you have a situation where you have project text fields, more than 45 project text fields, you're basically only going to get 45 of them. You're not going to go get everything. Now, having said that, there are ways around it using JSON to overcome those limitations and get basically everything, almost everything through Project Online. But the simpler OData read that you can deal with or read through quite easily has few limitations. Now, what I'm going to do now is going to basically switch to a very quick demo. Well, I've started already the demo to show you the the 2 pages. So we've done that. So we've looked at an XML output and we looked at the JSON output of a single Project Web Access instant on Project Online. Now, once I got those, I can then, as I said, put it on SQL. Now, the only difference with, for example, Power BI and some other reporting technologies that actually it can query an OData feed. So again, back to my deck here. As you can see here, Excel and SSRS, Excel itself also actually can get data from the OData feed, but Power BI, for example, as well. Those two interfaces, those reporting technologies can get the data directly from the OData feed. They don't have to wait for it to go to SQL and then go OLEDP. But SSRS, SQL Reporting Services, has to go that way. There is no, as far as I know, to date, I don't know about 2016 or whether they're going to include it or not, but SQL Reporting Services do not support an OData feed for the report. So you have to go through OLEDP. But Excel and Power BI can go directly from the OData, basically capture an OData feed and report through Power BI and Excel. So either Excel or Power BI will do the same thing. So I have Power BI here, so I'll show you how I can connect to either a SQL database that was built off OData feed or query in fact the OData feed directly. I can do both things. So first thing, let's just get the data through the OData feed. So again, I go get data, and it's an OData feed option here. Yeah. So I'll go OData. It will ask me what's your URL. What's the URL that I'm going to get the data from? So that's easy. We have it here. Again, the format could be XML or JSON. Doesn't really matter. So I'll just copy that address and then say, get me the project's data from my Project Online instance. And I go, OK. Now, while this is actually happening, I might do the same thing in Excel. So Excel, data, connections. And I want to create a new connection. Oops. Browse. And I believe if we just put it here, that will just pick it up. Or not. Yeah. So that's thinking as well. You can actually say that the data, the connection is all data, but I think if you just go open this URL, it will organize it itself. So the next thing is give me your account details. So there we go. That's my account details. Because now it's browsing to that location. Next, and I assume the Power BI will ask you for the same thing, but let's finish the process here in Excel. Sign in. Well, this is signing in. Same thing. Can you please log in? So I'm going to sign in through Power BI. Ask me for the credentials. In. Okay, so let's see what happened with Excel. Right, I thought we'd done that already. Yeah, next. Yeah. All right. So while this will now go connect and query the data, will bring it for me, and then I can start, creating my dashboard through the POE app. There we go. So it's loaded all the information. Well, it's actually queried it, and now I'm going to load it. But basically, it got me the information that I put through the browser, and get me the project information, actual date, finish date, same information that we've seen there, but now kind of it's a tabular format. What I go is I go load, and that will be here for me to start using. Same with Excel. Should be. So I don't know what's happening here. Just keep on asking me for the account. Maybe it's a trust thing. I had to try to be honest on this machine, so maybe it's a trusted site thing or something. Give it one more go. But I carry on with the Power BI. There we go. I get my query. This is the project online data, as you can see here. And then look, I start putting. How about we go with a table? Go with the example of I want project names and their start and finish. So I want project names, project name, project there we go. Project name as the that is. I can put that. Maybe we go. Put that. And I want all, and then finish date. Project finish or start, anything really. Just something with a value. Project finish difference, finish various ID. I'm going to put late start for now. I don't think they would have any data, but well, there we go. So yeah, there we go. I got all the project online data right there for me. It's quite easy through the OData. There we go. Through the Power BI. If we use Excel, it will be exactly the same thing. And all I've done is I've connected to the OData. I brought the information. Again, it will be limited based on what you do. I can change the chart. Well, I'm not going to do a Power BI demo, but it's a way to connect to it. Other ways to connect to it is go same thing, but then I'm going to go SQL Server. So the same data, I've scheduled it to come to SQL. I'll go connect to SQL Server. I'm actually going to do this, but then type in the server name, type in the database name, put your credentials, put it in. It will bring the same set of data, but it was scheduled, and it was queried, and it was stored in SQL database, and then you query it from there. So you either go through the OData directly, or bring it to SQL first in some staging SQL that you set up somewhere, and then query the database through an OLEDB. Why would you do that? Because technologies like SQL reporting services will not support OData. Excel, Power BI do. It depends on the reporting choice, I guess. So if I go back to my deck, it really depends on the combination of the 3 points that we talked about. So it's really about how to access the data, and I think we answered that today for the project online versus project server. But how to build the report, i.e. what's the tool that you're choosing to use in order to build the report. So again, for example, if you want SQL reporting services to build your report, you'll have to go with an OLEDB. You cannot use OData. And then how to expose to the end users, that's, I guess, also a question that would need to be answered, but it's not really relevant to our webinar today. So I guess that's it really from my, demo/presentation perspective. Hope that was useful and I guess gave us a bit of information in terms of what are the really key differences between Project Server and Project Online when it comes to reporting. Happy to take any questions, any comments, any queries really. Just let us know.
Yes, thanks everyone for attending, and we'll just, I guess, wrap it up and just while we wait for anyone if they have any questions. We appreciate your time and also patience. We started a couple of minutes later than we anticipated. And yeah, just really appreciate any feedback or questions that you have, so feel free to pop them in the side box there. Well, it looks like we aren't really getting anything through, so as always we're on email, and we'll send you a follow-up email after this webinar with a link to the recording. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email either Laith or myself, and we're happy to get back to you. But again, thanks for your time this afternoon, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks all. Thanks, Michelle.